what makes a good question? How do you ask it? The what and how questions, I think, are probably the ones that come to mind first when we think about what are questions, right? And how are we supposed to ask them? We'll get to the why questions, and why may be the most important question we ask later in the week. But this second week of reflections on value-add conversations is about questions and how we ask questions and what questions we ask. And so I thought it would be important to start with the what and how today. What and how may be the things we ask first, like what am I supposed to do? And then how am I supposed to go about doing that? It seems like a natural follow-up, right? Even Jesus, as he's talking to people, he gets into a conversation with a man who seems to think Jesus is doing a pretty good job of responding to things, and he asks Jesus, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus responds with another what question. He responds by saying, what is in the law? And how do you read it? And so as this guy kind of responds with what we know as the greatest commandment, found elsewhere in some of the Gospels as a response Jesus gives, actually, this guy gives it. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so Gospel writer Luke then recounts Jesus responding and saying, you have responded well. You've even added in, love your neighbor as yourself. This is great. And the young man says, yeah, but I want to know who is my neighbor. And so then Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan. And at the end, Jesus asks the question, who showed him mercy, who had mercy on him? Or who was the neighbor, who was the neighbor to the man? And the guy responds, the one who had mercy on him. And so then Jesus gives an instruction, go and do likewise. But it all centers around these questions of what and how. What is in the law, and how do you read it? I think for us, questions are often threatening because of what we think is the outcome, the answer to the question. So we ask questions about creation, or about science and the Bible, about God and the existence of evil, and we ask these questions. How can a good God exist when all this evil is in the world? How can a good God exist and yet allow things like COVID-19 to shut down the global economy and the world, to kill innocents who are the most vulnerable in our population? And before COVID-19, world wars and destruction and all these things. What are we supposed to do with this kind of world that we live in? And how should we respond as Christians? What is in the law? How do you read it? I think a lot of the time it's because we think certainty is the most important thing. We think having the right answer means that we will be saved, or we'll know for sure that we are right, and being right seems to be this valued commodity. And I think that if we actually value learning above being right, then questions become the key. And that's why I believe questions are worthy of a whole week of devotional reflection. And so as we come back to the passage that we're using as our devotional reading from John 21, I just want to remind you that this is kind of a restoration for Peter, who's denied Jesus 3 times and now is being asked a question 3 times. You see, questions aren't threatening. Questions aren't necessarily super gratifying, though, because they don't necessarily make us feel certainty. Peter didn't know what the answer that Jesus was looking for was. He just poured out his heart. And so hear this passage as I read the beginning part of it again through the 3 questions that Jesus asked Peter. And here, Peter is uncertain. He lingers in the uncertainty of the question Jesus is asking. The answer doesn't necessarily make him feel all that much better, but it's in the repetitiveness of it, it's in learning through that that Peter is restored to his place as really, in some ways, the first among the apostles. So hear the story. When they had finished eating, Jesus asked Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" Simon replied, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." Jesus asked a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Simon replied, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." Jesus said to him, "Take care of my sheep." He asked a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was sad that Jesus asked him a third time, "Do you love me?" He replied, "Lord, you know everything. You know I love you." We serve Jesus who knows everything. So why be afraid of questions? I hope that as we ask some good questions this week, that you'll think a little bit about what makes a good question and how might we ask it. If you have thoughts on that, I'd love for you to join in the conversation by commenting below on this video in the Instagram, or you can find me on my blog. I'm going to be writing a blog post about questions this week, and I'd hope for you to engage with me on my Facebook page or on the blog and ask good questions of ourselves and of God.